How are we doing, everyone? Welcome back to Dr. B Teaches and the 7th Generation Podcast. Hope everyone is doing well out there. I'm Dr. B, your Indigenous Sociology, American Indian Studies professor, Jiu-Jitsu black belt, father, and perennial student of this wild ride that we're all on, this wild life that we live. And in this day and age and all the crazy things going on in the world, I know a lot of people are out there struggling, having a difficult time. And so I hope my show and the podcast brings you a little bit of joy and some happiness and some constructive criticism of the society that we live in and all the things that are going on. And there is a lot going on. I've had a lot of people reach out to me and talk to me about just some of the struggles that people are going through, their personal struggles. And I wanted to spend some time talking a little bit about resilience, digging into this concept of resilience. And one thing that I'm always critical of is when people say, well, Indigenous people are resilient. And I believe that to be the truth with all my heart. That there's so many storms that we have been through and we have survived so much. And I would love to get to a point in time in our lives to where we didn't always have to be so darn resilient. And I know that maybe that's not realistic, but for the generations coming, for the next 7 generations, I would love to do my part. And I encourage all of you, if you're listening to this, whoever you are, that we all need to do our part for our children, our grandchildren, our great-grandchildren, all the kids that we'll never see when our time is up. And I would love to see us get to a point, all of us, and not just Indigenous peoples, not just Indigenous communities, but all human beings, get to a point where we didn't always have to be so damn resilient. But the reality is that we are, and we've demonstrated our resilience time and time again. And so that's going to be the focus of today's podcast, today's episode. And I want all of you to believe, especially if you are struggling, that whatever it is that you're going through, that you can overcome it. And I know that in some cases, it could be really bad. And I want you all to know that I've been there, and I'm going to share just a little bit about my own life. But we can make it through whatever storm comes our way. Look, we don't need the media, the corporate media, to tell us that we have all these challenges in the world. The corporate media feeds off of fear. And personally, I don't even watch the news. I read about the stories I feel like are important to read about, especially things that are going on here in the United States that concern us and Indigenous communities and some of the tragedy that we see around the world, especially in Gaza, the genocide that's currently happening there. So, of course, I follow those stories and I try to read up as much as I can. But you don't even have to watch the media to feel the tension in the world, to feel as though something isn't right, something's just terribly off. People are feeling it from an economic point of view. Rent is increasing. Wages are stagnant. And then, we're constantly fed this misinformation and these algorithms day after day, especially if you open up these devices right here. I have my device right here in front of me, and I do my best not to get too caught up in the algorithm because it can really bring you down and it can be very, very depressing. And again, I'm not saying that the world doesn't have problems, because it does. And I'm not here to gaslight you with some type of toxic positivity, because there's so many people out there who are struggling to pay their bills. Some people are having to choose between paying their bills and feeding their family. And that just isn't right. It's certainly not in a place like the United States where we have so much wealth, where people at the top of society are doing so well, are making record profits, and the average American family is struggling to take care of themselves, pay their their bills, their medical bills, care for the elderly, and whatever silent psychological battles that people are going through. And if you are out there struggling, I just want you to know that I see you, and I have been there. I've worn those shoes, and in some cases I still do. But here is the reality that I want all of you to internalize. If you're listening to this, remember this, that yes, the storm is real. I've weathered quite a few in my life, but the power to navigate it is there. It's inside of each and every one of us. I truly believe that. We can't always stop what's happening outside of our control, whatever it is that's going on. But what we can do is not make it worse by allowing ourselves to believe that we can't make it through it. So we can chart a positive course through the chaos. And again, I'm not here to sell you any type of bullshit, toxic positivity. The things that people are going through is real. And in some cases, it's overwhelming. It's just too much. And I'll be honest with you, there's been times that I've been through some things where it's just been too much. And I don't know how I made it through. And in some cases, I wasn't all that positive. But how can you be positive when you're going through a really terrible ordeal, whatever that ordeal is? And I just want to share with you a few things that I've had to struggle through. And, my life is really amazing. It's really beautiful. But to get to where I'm at, I've had to go through quite a bit. And I can tell you that there were times when I didn't believe that I was going to make it to the other side. And I always did. And so I want to share with you a little bit about my life, and maybe it'll help some of you get a better understanding of who I am as a human being, and also just to let you know that I've been there as well. I want to ground this podcast into some lived experiences, not just theory. I could sit here and cite all kinds of studies, and there's some studies I do want to share with you about resilience and overcoming trauma. But I want to just share with you just some things about me and some things I've had to overcome. One is really recent, and I'm still working on this, is I've had a pretty serious back injury that literally changed my life. Everything that I do is all physical. I help run 7th generation jiu-jitsu. I've been training jiu-jitsu for over 20 years, and I ended up rupturing a disc. Didn't know it. I guess apparently people are walking around with ruptured discs all over the world. In some cases, it doesn't affect individuals, and they don't really even have pain or anything, or maybe slight pain or what have you. But my ruptured disc was what you call an extrusion, where the disc broke open. I started pushing up into the nerve. I was feeling back pain, but then that back pain turned into some pretty serious nerve damage, and literally happened within seconds. So I was feeling pain for a couple of months, just kind of dealing with that. I should have slowed down. I should have just rested my body, but I've just always have just gone 24/7, always doing something, and I didn't listen to my body, and I ended up injuring myself pretty badly. And when this disc ruptured and it affected the nerve, it happened within seconds. My leg went numb. I was experiencing what you call drop foot, and all the things that I was doing, whether it was riding my bike or training jiu-jitsu or whatever, just going for a walk or a hike, I couldn't do it. And it was really hard for me the first couple of months, having to drag my foot around, and it was frightening. It was scary. Because I'm so active, and because I'm always out there doing something and having to sit and be in pain and deal with this trauma that I had in my leg, it really hit me hard psychologically and caused a lot of depression. And I really felt like I didn't know how I was going to keep the gym open. and how I was going to get past this injury. And for me, somebody who uses their body every day in an aggressive way, just pushing myself to the limits physically, something I enjoy doing, not being able to do that was really, really rough. And I had to change everything about my life. And I still haven't overcome this injury. And it's possible maybe someday I have to have back surgery. And I wanted to do my best to heal up in an organic way and to do it naturally and not have to have some type of major surgery, back surgery. So that injury just changed everything about my life. And I had to make up my mind, was I going to allow this injury just to completely destroy my sense of self and make me so depressed that I couldn't figure out a way to adjust my life in a good way. And I had to do that. And I've been able to do that, but it hasn't been easy. And being physically wrecked, feeling physically wrecked, not being able to move, being in pain just getting out of bed, not being able to run, not being able to train jiu-jitsu, something I've done for 20 plus years, not being able to go to the gym and even teach jiu-jitsu. I had to have a lot of trust in people, and I was lucky enough to have some really amazing people in my life who were willing to pick up where I left off because I just wasn't able to train. But in doing so, I learned that there was other things that I could do, and I can contribute, maybe not in the same way that I contributed prior to my injury, but I feel like my injury forced me to not only give up a lot of responsibilities and to let other people in, so that way everything didn't fall on me, because I was doing so much that I think that it was too much. And I just learned that I needed to let go. And it's been a really hard thing for me to do, but it's been one of the best things that have happened to me. And yeah, this injury has changed my life, but I feel like I'm a better coach. I feel like I can empathize more also with people who deal with injuries like this. And I've been able to overcome that depression that one feels when you can't do the things physically that you once did because of whatever. In some cases, it's a car accident. In my case, it was a ruptured disc, but it could be a lot of things that happen. Some people get struck down by just various diseases out there, and their life changes in an instant. And I felt that. And my body, because of my age, it may never be the same, and that's okay. That is okay. And what I've learned is that there is going to be some changes physically for all of us, and that's okay. That you can still find your place wherever it is. And I've been able to find my place. And today I'm more of a coach, and I mentor my jiu-jitsu students as best as I can. I guide them the best that I can. And since the injury, I feel like my coaching is just so much better. I have time to think about things other than just my own physicality. Another thing I want to talk about too is my academic journey. People think, my life is so wonderful and so amazing, and, I'm a college professor and everything's just been great. Well, getting to the point to where I was able to apply for a full-time teaching job, get that job, and hold that down, that was quite a journey and a process in and of itself. I come from a very poor background, and my father's working class, mother working class. Neither one of them have a high school degree, and they come from a different generation of people where they didn't have any opportunities. And living in America during their time, and I'm much older than probably a lot of you listening to this. I'm in my 50s. And so my father's 80 years old, and my mother's in her 70s. And they come from a completely different generation where the opportunities that they had were few and far and in between. And of course, I was that first generation who had more opportunities to be able to do something, at least as far as education is concerned. And when I left high school, I did not finish high school, by the way. I ended up quitting high school, and I took the GED, and I started working. I had my first full-time job when I was 17 years old. When I should have been in high school finishing my high school diploma, I was already working full-time. And I think I got my first job when I was 14 years old as a dishwasher. And so I was just brought up just to be a worker and not to think about college, not to think about anything academic. And I wasn't an avid reader. I never had teachers who encouraged me to do anything in school besides just do whatever it is I was told to do. And I was not raised up by educators who cared, who saw me as somebody who could go on to college. I was never told I could go to college. I could do something with my life on this level. So I had to deal with a lot of imposter syndrome when I did start college. And I felt many times like this wasn't something that I could do, wasn't something for me. And I could have very easily just went down a different path in life. And how I got here, a lot of it, I will say, a lot of it is luck, a lot of it being in the right place at the right time. But I feel like the biggest factor is just me never giving up and believing in myself even when nobody believed in me. I just wanted something more for me. And this is something that I think is a very important message I tell everybody is you have to want something more for yourself. It has to come from within. It can't come from your parents. It can't come from your best friends. It has to come from you. The role of our parents and our friends are be to support and to encourage and to mentor the best way that you can. And I can say I've had some amazing mentors, some amazing people who've spent time with me. But getting to that point to where I felt like this academic journey was even possible was really quite a journey in and of itself. And once I made that leap, I was dealing with all the voices in my head saying that I couldn't do it, and having this feeling always that I wasn't good enough. And I experienced that basically throughout my entire college life, all the way through. Even when I earned my bachelor's degree, I still felt this sense of accomplishment for sure, but this sense that I didn't belong. And that maybe it was a fluke that I was able to earn that college degree. And then I earned my master's degree and eventually my PhD. And there were times where I just wanted to quit, and I had so many obstacles in the way. But through all that, what I learned was that whole process is that there's so much that is possible. If I could go back and in time and I guess speak to myself, that's what I would say is so much is possible. There's so much that you can do with your life. You can't even imagine, because there's no way where I come from, growing up as poor as I grew up, not always having enough food to eat, not always having the nicest clothes to wear to school. In some cases, having to do my best to function as a kid, having to deal with all kinds of trauma around me, being traumatized as a kid as well. It is a miracle that I was able to get to where I was at. And I tell that to people all the time, is there's so much that they could do with their lives. I don't necessarily share what I'm sharing with you But I want people to believe that they could accomplish just about anything. Now, I'm not that kind of person who's going to tell someone, well, you just got to put your mind to it and you can do anything. I mean, there's limitations to the things that we can do. And a lot of it that I have been able to accomplish in my life, it's there are limits to it. There's definitely limits to it, and I would say that we just have to find what's going to push us to accomplish whatever goals those are. And once you find that, whatever it is inside of you that this is what I want to do, just about anything is possible. And I'm not saying that you're always going to be successful, because there's plenty of times that I have failed as an academic, and just getting to the finish line sometimes just felt so incredibly taxing. And I wonder sometimes when I think back and I reflect back how I was able to make it. But the message here I'm trying to send out is that you can make it, and you can persist through some of the most difficult things in your life. Me being able to overcome, a lot of trauma that I experienced as a kid, and having imposter syndrome, feeling like I was stupid, like I wasn't intelligent, that I was ugly, all kinds of negative thoughts always rolling through my head, and being able to overcome that, and to earn a college degree, and then to go on to grad school and earn a PhD. And looking back at my life, it would seem impossible. But it's not, and it wasn't. And am I this well-known college professor? I am not. Do I have a bunch of academic articles behind my name? I do not. Am I well-known in my area? 100% not. But from where I came from and where I'm at today, it's pretty amazing. At least for me it is. And it's not about what other people think. It's not about what, I don't know, somebody doesn't know you, how they look at you. It's how you look at yourself. And that's what I do my best to do, is when I look at my life, am I happy with what I've done? And I am. Am I happy with all my decisions? Absolutely not. But my choice to go to school, my choice to pursue a degree in sociology, indigenous studies, is one of the best decisions I ever made in my life. It's just brought so much goodness to my life. But getting here was not easy, and I had to overcome quite a bit. And it's been hard, even to this day, where I'm at in my life. It's hard to even sit back and enjoy it, because that struggle was so real. But the main point of my story here, this journey that I went through, is that there's so much that's possible for each and every one of us. Even if you feel that it's not, trust me, it's possible. There's so much out there for each and every one of you. And I want you all to believe that. I guess the last story I want to tell about my life is that, I have burned bridges. I have made countless mistakes, and I'm sure I've hurt friends and family members and said things out of anger. I haven't always been the best friend to all my friends, and I went through a really horrible divorce some years ago, and I've been pretty low. I've been at the lowest of the low. I've been homeless, unable to pay my bills, unable to pay my taxes. Trust me, I have struggled in so many different ways. And much of that is often due to just my own bad choices and things that I have done personally to make my life more difficult. And I want everybody to know we're going to make mistakes. We're human beings. That's what human beings do. And I understand today, in today's world, unfortunately, I'm getting this feeling it's as if the world is less forgiving. And maybe I come from a generation where you could make more mistakes and you could recover from those mistakes. And maybe it's just not that way any longer. And I completely understand that. But I just want everybody to know I've made so many bad mistakes and I have not always been the best person. I've always tried my best to work on myself, but at the same time, not being delusional and recognizing that I haven't always been the best friend. I've had some relationships that I've had to repair, and I've had to go to people and apologize and tell them that I'm sorry and let them know that, I love them and I care about them. And it doesn't erase the past, doesn't erase the hurt maybe that I have caused on people or that you may have caused on people, but it can rewrite a better future. And that's, I think, an important message. I want you all to know that I haven't always been the best person that I can be. And a lot of it is through my own personal struggles and my own personal things that I had to take ownership of, and I had to make it through. And in some cases, I just wasn't in a position to be a very good friend. And I've had to acknowledge that, and I've had to apologize to certain people who maybe didn't understand, or try to give them the best explanation possible. And so I think ownership of our mistakes is important. It's not always easy to do. It's easier said than done. And sometimes it's painful as well to know that we weren't a very good friend or we weren't a very good person. But at the same time, that's not the end. That's not the totality of our life. And we can rewrite a better future. And everybody that I know, everybody that I've ever talked to about their life has made mistakes. We all make them. That's part of being a human being. Nobody's perfect. We're not a machine. We're not a computer. So you're going to make mistakes. But I think making sure that you reflect, that you leave the past in the past, but before you do that, you make sure to reflect on the past. That way you don't make those same mistakes. That way you can do better in the future. All right, so let's talk about the science of bouncing back. So before I hit you with any tactics on how to overcome life challenges, I want to share with you some data, some academic research that says this attitude of never giving up isn't some just pep talk poetry, that it's real and it's evidence-based. So there's a study that hits home for me. And it's a longitudinal study. It was done over a 40-year period. And they looked at these children, 1/3 of which grew up in deep poverty, addiction, violence in the home. And I could really relate to that because, I grew up in a very poor household. But not only that, my father was an alcoholic and a drug addict. And, I was exposed to just a lot of trauma growing up as a kid. And some of that trauma just never leaves you, but you can overcome it. And this study shows that, by midlife, at least according to the study, some 2/3 of these kids who were considered high risk were thriving. They had good jobs, solid relationships, and decent health. And there was some common threads that the study saw, was that they had some caring adult in their life when they were growing up. And I just think about the amazing people that I had in my life, and my grandmother, for one, who was just so loving. I did have people in my life who were loving and who were caring, who were empathetic, and who taught me those really beautiful values. Having a sense of purpose is one of the variables as well. Now, a sense of purpose could mean so much, but I take that to mean that there's something about you that you have inside of you that you want to give back to the world, that you want to do for yourself, that makes you want to wake up in the morning and get out there and get after it. And the last thing was chances to help their community, doing something in the community, giving back. And there's a lot of research on that alone, doing something in the community, really can do wonders for your mental health. So what does this teach us? That resilience is learned, it's relational, it's not just dumb luck, or it's not the result of somebody having good genetics. There's also something called the moderate adversity advantage. And this is a study out of the University of Buffalo that looked at some 2,000 adults. And there is definitely a sweet spot of hardship that all of us have to go through to be able to develop some kind of resilience. And having zero hardship, what we've learned in academia, is not a good thing. People who have bulldozer parents or helicopter parents, a lot of these kids grow up and they deal with all kinds of anxiety because they've had all their issues solved by their parents. They've never had to overcome anything. And one of the things I can say for sure that helped me out over the years is a lot of the hardship that I went through, and not always having somebody there to fix it helped me in this sense that it basically told me that I needed to be the one that had to deal with the issues that came my way. And I wasn't going to rely on somebody else, or I was kind of raised up to know that if you want things to be good for you, you have to take responsibility for your life and you have to make things good for you. So there's obviously a point where just too much trauma, too much hardship can destroy an individual. And that's something that this study shows as well. So there has to be some type of moderate hardship in our lives to give us that sense that we can overcome whatever challenges that we're faced with. Obviously, there's some people that just have way too much stress, way too much trauma, and that is also true. And I want to acknowledge that because there are a lot of people that I know, people in my own family, who've been through so much and didn't have a chance to overcome some of the most difficult things. And I do want to acknowledge that there are some people who've just been through just incredible trauma, had their lives devastated. And in some cases, that is too much. There is such a thing as just too much, especially for children who experience some of the worst types of traumas, worst types of abuses. So stress is definitely a killer, and it can be devastating to people, but having some stress isn't always a bad thing. And so just remember that. Nietzsche was right. What doesn't kill you can make you stronger, as long as it's not overwhelming. And I'll just talking more about my divorce. That was really difficult for me. I was so depressed. And one of the things that really brought on my depression when I went through my divorce, it wasn't so much just knowing that I failed as a husband and having to start over. That's depressing enough for some people. It was the fact that I went from coming from nothing to building up a little something and having, I had owned 2 homes at the time, ended up losing everything. And I couldn't pay my bills, and I was homeless for a while, and I was having to go to work and try to be the best person I could be at my job, not having a home to live in. And it was so incredibly humbling, and it was almost too much. And I was able to overcome it. But when I was in the middle of it, it felt like it was never going to end. So the point here is that sometimes things are just too much. And I want to acknowledge that because there's some situations that I see people go through and I don't know how they've been able to overcome it. And some situations where people haven't been able to get to the other end. And that is not a dig at anybody. If somebody has experienced some of the hardships that I've seen people experience, especially knowing how society works, and I look at the trauma that these people are experiencing in a place like Gaza, where there's a genocide taking place, and I don't know what that is going to do to the people who survive and just how that trauma will affect them in generations to come. Because that is too much, seeing people around you being murdered and killed and starving to death. Luckily, when I look at my life, it was hard, it was difficult. I was able to make it to adulthood with having not had to experience some of the things that people experience, say, in the third world or in developing countries. And so I kind of looked out that I was born here in the United States. All right, so there's one last psychological study I want to talk about, and it refers to this idea of post-traumatic growth. So there was 2 researchers that interviewed war vets, cancer survivors, disaster victims. And what they found was that 90% of these individuals that they interviewed reported at least one positive life transformation that came from these life challenges and these difficulties, whether it was deeper relationships or having a greater sense of purpose in their life, better work outcomes, richer spirituality. Something good came from these life difficulties, these life challenges. This always goes back to something that my mom always told me growing up. She used to say that nothing is all bad and that something good is going to come from these difficulties that we experience as a family, that everything that we go through, something good is going to happen. My mom used to always tell me that, and I do believe that that is true. Pain and this trauma that we experience can be fertilizer for wisdom and better life experiences. So when I tell you that the storm will pass and you're going to be stronger and tougher and more resilient once you make it to the other side, I'm not selling you some kind of fairy tale. This is all backed up by decades of scientific research. So our nervous system wants to heal. Our bodies, psychologically, spiritually, wants us to heal and grow. And it's our job to feed that process. But here's the deal, is challenges are going to happen. They're going to come at the least opportune moment, usually when we least expect it. And I would have never thought, just looking at the things that are going on in this world right now, especially with these ICE raids or even what's happening in Gaza, and those are the two things that just stand out in my head as I'm recording this podcast, that I would have never thought 6 months ago that we would be right here and you would see tens of thousands of families just being ripped apart and that you'd have Marines in the streets. I just never thought that this would be happening. Just some of the things that I'm seeing around the world in American society. I never thought we would get to this point. And so challenges are going to come out of nowhere. Just remember that when you least expect it. But usually they peak. There are going to be some serious challenges that are going to feel like you cannot overcome them. And again, I look at all the challenges I've ever had in my life. I think there was a point in time where I thought, man, this is never going to end. I'm not going to be able to overcome it. But you can, and everything will eventually come to an end. So our challenges are going to come out of nowhere. They're going to hit us when we least expect it, and you're going to have that feeling like, man, I can't overcome this. But our challenges will peak, and eventually they're going to slowly go away. Will everything feel endless while you're in the moment? Absolutely. I look back at even just something positive in my life, like earning my PhD. I just never thought I was going to finish my dissertation. I thought, man, I'm going to be a college student forever. Well, my dissertation eventually came to an end. I finished my research, I defended it, and I earned my PhD. And that trauma still lives inside of me because to this day, it's kind of funny, a reoccurring dream that I have is that I miss something and I have to go back and take another class, or I have to do something. It's one of the funniest things, and I often wonder why I do that. But I have this reoccurring dream. But yeah, I have this dream where I have to go back and finish something that I didn't quite finish my degree. It's one of the most funny things that I laugh about when I wake up in the morning and I remember having that dream. But it's a dream that I'll have every now and again. But all this comes to an end. It eventually does. Everything that we go through, that we're going through, our lives are going to change. And probably if we're open to it, something good can come from it. So I think one of the most important survival tactics that I use is having, again, some kind of purpose. And I try to have good, healthy relationships in my life. And everything that I do, I want to have some kind of meaning. So have a purpose in your life. We all have to have a purpose. I think that is going to give us not only something to do, something constructive, but it's also inspiring, and it feels good to be inspired. And it doesn't matter what your purpose is, and your purpose doesn't have to be anything grand. It can be something like starting a business or getting into activism or just working on your parenting or what have you. It doesn't really matter as long as it matters to you. That's what's most important. So having a sense of purpose and also celebrating your wins. This is something I didn't do enough of, is that whenever things went well, I didn't sit back and kind of take it all in and soak it all up. I mean, I had so many great things happen in my life, and I just didn't, at times, allow myself to enjoy it. So allow yourself to enjoy even the small wins, because we should be enjoying our lives. And that's something that I think about my sister, my older sister, and she used to tell me, is that life is supposed to be good and you're supposed to be happy. Let yourself be happy, even if it's for a couple minutes a day. Start there if you have difficulty with that. But yeah, enjoy the wins, however small they are. And don't ever say, no, that wasn't that important. You know, I have people tell me when they get their college degree and they leave with an AA degree from the college they teach at, that, oh, it wasn't that big of a deal. And I stop, I'm like, no, it is a big deal. Or when somebody gets their bachelor's degree, I tell them that that's a big accomplishment. Spend some time and celebrate that moment and have a party and know that you're amazing, that you're incredible. And then, of course, just being a part of a community. And this lone wolf mythology bullshit that we're fed into, this rugged individualism crap, is just absolute nonsense. And there's no such thing as a lone wolf. Wolves survive in packs. And so being a part of a community, now some people have a community that they're a part of, and maybe it's not the best community, and maybe you need to reassess that. But I have all kinds of people that I care about, that I enjoy being around, and without those positive things in my life would not be the way that it is. It would be really difficult. And there's a lot of different communities out there that you can be a part of. So community is real currency. And I know for me, when I was going through a lot of my difficulties, I had my jiu-jitsu community. I didn't go to jiu-jitsu talking about my problems and telling people how depressed I was. I just went there and I enjoyed myself being around people who weren't depressed, being around people who enjoyed the same thing that I enjoyed. And so there's a lot of communities out there that are waiting for you and want you to come and join them, and just make sure it's something positive. And obviously, make sure you're not watching too much damn TV, news. These devices, again, they help us reach people and whatnot. There's something good in here, but there's also something not so good in these devices. And the algorithm and social media, you get a steady diet of negativity or whatever nonsense feeds into our implicit biases and all our bullshit. That's not going to help your life out. So less social media, less junk food, and better nutrients in your body, going for a walk, getting some sunlight, being active physically as much as you can. I have physical limitations, but it doesn't stop me from doing everything that I could do. Getting outside as much as I can, lifting weights. I don't lift weights like I used to because I can't. I can't run and I can't do a lot of things right now, but I do what I can do. And of course, having a good solid ritual and routine. Human beings crave that. And one of the things that I know was difficulty that was difficult for me growing up is just not having a very stable home. And not having a very stable home, not having stability, and you just get used to that, and you just get used to just creating your own chaos in your own life. And I see people do that all the time, and we can't do that. We can't create chaos in our life. We have to have a good, solid routine, and we have to kind of ritualize our lives a little bit. It's good for you psychologically. It's not good for us to have constant chaos. And sometimes we bring that chaos and we welcome it into our life, which brings me to this idea of radical responsibility and not just letting ourselves off the hook. We have to be responsible for our lives. It's part of self-empowerment. When you say that I'm going to take responsibility for my behavior, I'm going to take responsibility for my actions, that's real power. Once you get to that point, let me tell you, your life is going to change in positive ways. Taking responsibility for your physical health, the things that you bring into your mind as well, and staying away from things that you know are just ugly and negative, gossip, and just the people out there who you know aren't doing good things. Because if you hang around those environments, you're going to internalize that. It's not healthy for you. Take responsibility for making those changes. Trust me, it's going to be good for you. It's going to be good for your life. And I hope that you believe that, because for me, I know that for all the difficulties I've ever had, whatever it is, the things that I wasn't very good at, the things that I wanted to get better at, I had to work at it. It takes work. It takes time. And if you fail, it's okay. You will eventually get to where you want to get to, as long as you really want to and you take full responsibility for that journey. So that's something that's super, super important. All right, and here's something that's super, super important. You have to dream, and you have to dream big. Whatever it is that you want to do or thought about doing, it's possible. Whether it's owning a business or starting a nonprofit, going to school, becoming a nurse, whatever it is. I've had people come to me and they tell me, well, I want to do this and that and the other. And what I always tell them, it is possible. You just have to take steps in that direction. And you need to have some kind of plan. You need to put that plan into motion. And trust me, all the different things that I've done with my life, I've had all kinds of fear that told me that not to do it. That, oh, that's not a good idea because, you could fail at it. And if you fail at it, it could hurt you financially or whatever my fears were. And you just have to know that fear is going to be there. The struggle is going to be there. You're not going to be able to get to a better place in life or accomplish those dreams without some kind of struggle. And something that got me through all the struggles that I went through is I just looked at my life and looked at all the things I overcame and looked at where I came from. I looked at what my parents had to overcome just to be able to be in this world, and what my ancestors had to overcome just so I could be here today. And that helped me take care of all kinds of fear that I had. And whenever I think about being fearful of something, I just look at those people in my past and everything they had to overcome. And that usually does the trick for me. That's something that works for me. But you all can overcome your fears. You all can get the momentum to move forward in a good way. And there's going to be people out there who are cynics, armchair critics, going to tell you that this and that isn't possible. Don't listen to them. Do not listen to those negative individuals who want to kill your dreams. Because all kinds of dream killers out there. I run into them every day. And we need to build people up and let people know that so much is possible. And it's going to take hard work. It's going to take some struggle, some sacrifice, and not always feeling good about the journey that you're on, but you can get there. And That's something that everybody needs to know. And that's something we need to push more as well. There's enough people out there who are cynical about the world, who always believe that the sky is falling. There's nothing that we can do to ever change it. But trust me, there is something that we can do. All right, so we're coming to the end of this episode, and I just want you to know all these life challenges, difficulties, all the stuff that's going on in the world right now that is just traumatizing people, it is not infinite. It's all going to come to an end, and something good is going to come from this. I know it. And I want you guys to believe it, everybody out there to believe. And it's our job. We have to take ownership of our lives, take ownership of what's happening in our communities. We have to fight and we have to struggle. We have to own our mistakes, and we have to raise our children and the people around us to believe that we can make good, positive changes, not only in our own lives, but in our communities. So above all, my message here today is never give up. Never, ever give up. And if you're listening to this on YouTube, please share a story about something in your life that you had to overcome. I'm really interested in hearing from you and things that you've had to go through. I also want you all to know that I appreciate all the support, and any kind of feedback about what I do is welcomed. I also have a very small community on Patreon. You can check out my Patreon, Dr. B Teaches. And if you want to support some of the work that I'm doing by giving a donation, that would be more than welcomed. I do this all on my own, and all the equipment that I buy, I save for. I don't have any sponsors. I've had people reach out to me asking me to sponsor the 7th Generation podcast. I'm really careful about those types of commitments, and I just want you to know that everything that I do it because I just enjoy it. I love that I created the 7th Generation podcast now over 5 years ago, and the work that I do, it's been really interesting these last couple of years, just seeing my audience grow on the different platforms. So I enjoy doing this, and I'm going to continue to do it as long as I have the time, as long as I have the energy. And I want you to get out there and do all the things that you want to do, and know that I believe in you. And there's so many other people out there who are like you, that are struggling, that are going through all these life difficulties, that are seeing, in some cases, their life completely implode. And I understand that, but you can come out of this on the other side, and you can make something good from this. Whatever it is that you had to go through as a kid, I've done it myself, and I want you to know that I believe in you. So this is Dr. B. Dr. B Teaches, 7th Generation podcast. I appreciate y'all. Feel free to follow me on my TikTok, which is Merciless Savages. That's my handle. Instagram, the 7th Gen podcast. And much love and respect to everybody. Stay strong. Whatever it is that you're going through, it's going to come to an end. All this craziness in the world, we're going to make something good come from it. Later. Till next time.